Let's talk about hyped books for a second. Specifically, let's review 10 fantasy books that seems to be all over the internet, and I really need your help here. Let's start together this mission of helping all the readers in this community to figure out if these 10 very hyped fantasy books that we'll see are for them or not, so that we can have in one place not only what are the booktube darling books and why everyone loves it and you need to read it, but actually the facts, what are the things that we believe will make it for some readers and which ones aren't. And let's start with no other than Legends and Lattes. This is a booktube darling. It's becoming the king of cozy fantasy, and I reckon it has opened the space for these type of reads more and more. For me, it was great. It is fairly character driven. The plot, it is not so much, but sufficient stuff happened, and the pacing in itself, I felt that it moved at a reasonable pace. However, it wasn't epic and it did not have a lot of drama, and therefore it's not going to be for everyone.
I think you will really enjoy it if you want a palate cleanser, if you want something that it's very easy to read,
if you want something that is really soothing, very cozy, with characters that are a little bit of misfit, but still they feed into different categories, kind of like tropes. We have the leader, we have the romantic interest, you know, like we still have those boxes that are not super different, therefore it's a comfort read.
But you won't like it if you want something really important to happen.
Legends and Lattes, at the time of filming, it's currently in the shortlist of the finalist for the Hugo Awards, and it might get it. And a lot of people, it's slightly mad about it because, yeah, not so much happened. Soothing though. And I really think it works. And we continue with another huge booktube darling, in this case the Dandelion Dynasty. If you've been using booktube for a while, you know that the Dandelion Dynasty, it's becoming a theme, especially the second book. It is 4 books, it is concluded, and everyone is like, brilliant, 5 stars, amazing, I cannot believe it. I just read first book and it really worked for me, 4.5 stars. I can agree, this is amazing. It is, though, not a book for a lot of people. It is fairly character driven, but in a way that it's very weird because it's not actually. We will get to see different characters throughout their lives, so lots of events from these characters happen, but we will not really connect with these characters, which ultimately for me was what made this book not a 5-star read. The plot, it's intense, insane, and also the pacing, it's super fast because, you know, things happen very fast. Each chapter is a story, and that story matters. It felt very epic, it felt right amount of descriptiveness, and it really felt down my alley.
I believe that you will love it if you are a fan of history, if you like war, if you like politics.
However, I don't believe that you will enjoy it if you are seeking a very cohesive story that will get deep into the conscious or the inner dialogue of our characters, and if you really want the feels for our characters, because
you won't get that. And it were times that I felt pretty disconnected to these characters. It is intense, it is a little bit dense, and it needs your full attention. And speaking about booktube darlings, we have Greenbone Saga by Fondly. If you're not new to the channel, you know that I am obsessed with the saga. It is fantastic, 5-star read for me. Why? Because it is very character driven, but it feels epic. It has so much drama, so much passion. The characters are nuanced, the stakes are very high, and it is highly political, and I enjoyed it beginning to end.
I think you will enjoy it if you want something that is slightly different. We will get that pacing, that it's slightly more slower.
But if you like strategy and family drama and the complex dynamic between different characters, not just insta-love, but what are the sibling relationships, how mother and son relates, how enemies relate, and how they interact, this is for you. It is a perfect portrait of characters that are fighting for the control of the Jade. This has an emotional punch, and at its core, this story will follow these 2 bands that fight for the control of the Jade, and Jade allows people to have special powers.
I don't believe that you will like it if you like your fantasy to be very magically or to be really a hard magic system.
If you want something that feels more classic, more like the quest, the chosen one, those are not the tropes that we are seeing displayed in this story. And it is like, don't get yourself lost for how cool it sounds that Jade can grant you some powers, because that is almost a secondary theme for the main story, which is the drama. Now let's move a little bit away from booktube with something that is all around book talk, and it has incredible ratings on Goodreads, and that is The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This book has lots of hype because not only is everywhere, but also because very popular booktubers are picking this book and are loving it. This is a fantasy romance that has a lot of Hunger Games themes, which I feel this dystopian almost topic, it's coming back again, has lots of action. It is very, very action driven. The plot, intense. The pacing, very fast. The character work, not as much. Therefore, for me, was like, meh. I understand why this is very consuming for lots of people, because the romance, it's very well done, and because the stakes are really high, the setting, it's mysterious, but it just lacks that part of me.
And who I think will really enjoy this story. One, if you like sexy times, you will really enjoy this. It's not super over the top spicy, but it has the right amount of things for you to feel like,
Then it also has this trial kind of sense. So if you are a junkie of action, this will be a book for you. Definitely. Also, it feels really different. We will have vampires, which is all very retro, and I really enjoyed that part. I
don't believe that you will like it if you are seeking a world that builds naturally, because there's a fair amount of info dump in here.
If you like characters to develop relationships slowly but surely, not the case. And if you want your character to be kind of like an underdog, and for that character to discover themselves, their powers, this is not for you. Our main characters are very secure. They know their strengths. This is at its core a story of a tournament that happens in this world, where basically we will have different vampire houses. Either you win or you die. Another series that it's also very, very, very hyped, I feel, it's The Locked Tomb with the first book, Gideon the Ninth. This is so weird to me. I don't really understand why it is so hyped, or it is picked up and loved by so many different readers. A good blend between character and plot driven. The pacing moves also very fast, and you know, that tick those boxes for me. Then we have this very magically setting where we have different necromancer houses in space. Each of these houses has different necromancer powers, and there's a trials at its core with people that it's savage.
I don't believe that you will like it though, if you are the type of reader that usually enjoys understanding everything from the beginning. Like, if you want your story to make sense in your brain, this is not it.
However, if you are used to read Malazan, or to read all those stories that really are hoping for you to just keep up to whatever happens and you will learn afterwards, then I think you will make it.
If you like your characters to feel different, to feel kind of like fun, but at the same time very focused, very driven, this is it for you. And we continue with Divine Rivals, which I acknowledge that maybe from this list is the one that you might expect the least. And depending which channels or which social media you usually consume, you would have seen this book everywhere, or maybe you haven't in your life. Let me tell you more. This is from one of my favorite authors, Rebecca Ross, and it almost reads as historical fiction. There's a fantasy layer that we will get to see, but it is not huge, and it is kind of like the story of two enemies to lovers that are reporters in a war. Very intense, very sad. It is a fairly dark book, keeping in mind that this is young adult. And sadly, I found it to be very underwhelming. It had great characters. Also, the pacing was fine and the plot was definitely very interesting, but I just wasn't able to connect with the characters. Everything felt very predictable to me, and I just saw these characters as being very, very, very young, and that for some reason just I wasn't able to properly read and enjoy this story.
However, I think that you will love it if you like historical fiction, if you like enemies to lovers, if you like your characters to be kind of like misfits, and if you're alright with reading something that it's not super magical driven.
I think, however, that you will find it really underwhelming if you are seeking something that feels profound. It started in a way that made me feel lots of emotions, but then those emotions felt flat pretty easily.
And we continue with an author that it feels to me it's always on trend, and that is R.F. Kuang, in this case with Babel. Now, I know that Yellowface is right now having lots of hype as well, but I haven't read it yet, so I cannot say. I know that there's people that has loved it, but let's talk about this chunky standalone. It is a dark academia story, and it is fantastic in that sense. I feel it just works really well, those tropes, and it makes it in a way that you feel that, you know, you feel smart. And afterwards I felt different because I spent time thinking on topics that are really relevant still from our society today. Very character driven. The plot, it is there, but the pacing, it's really slow. It still was great for me because I was able to connect with these different characters and because I have faith in this author. Very emotional. Stakes seems high, but it is kind of like within their story. It's not like all the world will change kind of stakes. In this world, studying languages, it's kind of like a door to manage and to take control of this magic that can change and influence stuff.
I think you'll love it if you like dark academia in a setting in which you will have footnotes of stuff that it's translated. That kind of extreme dark academia profile.
And also if you like your stories to have no romance, but to still keep great dynamic.
I think you'll hate it if you don't love these themes. If you like a story with dark academia themes, but not as much, this is not going to be for you. If you want something like really magical, really fantastical, no, just skip it.
Let's move to another cozy adult fantasy read that it's everywhere lately, I feel, which is Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries. This story, it's been loved by different booktubers, and I feel that afterwards, plus the rise of these comfort reads, it is just making so much momentum for these type of books. And it is a book that for me made it, but I don't quite see why so much people love it so much. Character driven, but in a way that I wasn't really able to connect properly with the emotions of these characters, maybe because I wasn't really, vibing with their motivations. The plot moves, but it is fairly slow, and it's comforting and it's soothing. It has some moments that are very hilarious.
And I think you'll love it if you like enemies to lovers, if you like fairies and you like these fairy tale-esque stories.
Because at the end of the day, this will follow the story of our girl who will move to the north, and she will get there to understand and to catalog fairies. It also feels a little bit dark academia.
However, I think that you will not really enjoy it if you want something that has really adventure, or if you want something that feels truly epic.
If you want very complex dynamics or emotions, this is not gonna be for you necessarily. And of course, if you don't like fairies, this is not for you. And I'm leaving the best for the last, and let's talk now about Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This book, it's an exception. It is not fantasy, but it's everywhere, and I really enjoyed it, and I think it's very different, and I think lots of people can also love this book. For me, one of the best books that I read this year so far. It is very character driven. The pace moves, although I acknowledge that it's medium. It is not fast. We will follow these characters throughout their lives, and the gist of this story is that they are game designers and they are building different games, and it is their relationship and how they relate with games and with one another and their role in their society, and that's it.
I think you'll really enjoy it if you are passionate about games, about game designing, about, you know, having a dream, a purpose, and doing everything for it.
I don't believe that you will enjoy it if you are seeking something that feels like Ready Player One. It is not at all that kind of story. This feels more as little different stories collected in a book.
That might not be for everyone, but to me it sounded really good and I really enjoyed it. And last, we have Fourth Wing, the viral sensation, the book that at the beginning of May it had only 6,000 ratings on Goodreads, and right now in July has more than 250,000 ratings, which is incredible. It has still an amazing rating, Stormlight Archive rating, and it has conquered the love for both adult readers, young readers, fantasy romance lovers, but also grimdark readers. It is very weird how this book is getting to lots of people, and it is a perfect example of marketing done amazing. Now, I picked up this book when still the hype wasn't as much, and I enjoyed it. I don't believe it is worth the hype that it has, but maybe because the tropes that I'm seeing are not new to me, and because I believe those tropes are done better in another series. Good blend between character and plot-driven story, leaning more towards the plot-driven side. The pacing, it's fast, and yes, there are fantastical creatures, aka dragons, and that it's amazing. And there's also a military setting, there's an attempt of politics, but it's basically at its core the story of the romance between different characters.
I think that you will love it if you are currently seeking for something that reads fast, that it is super accessible, engaging, with the theme that feels like divergent and very dystopian.
The dragons, the academy, you know, testing yourself, very high stakes, especially the enemies to lover relationship here. It's done in a way that I reckon it's brilliant.
I think that you won't like it if you want politics, if you want really realistic consequences, and if you like a story with the world building that feels natural.
But the dragons, they're worth it. If you're wondering which is the series that I believe it's better, mandatory shout out to the Aurelian Cycle, which is basically same story with way more politics, way less romance, and it's brilliant. Now, if you want to see what are my favorite books of this year, regardless of these being very hyped or not, I will link here a video where you can check the books that marked all my thingies, everything that I need.